Richard, thanks very much for a truly wonderful talk. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to listen to it. I think one of the tragedy of our times is that you, well, maybe it's for our benefit, maybe it's not a total tragedy, but the fact you're not able to deliver such a lecture at Edinburgh University is a real shame, I'll put it that way. So to my question, it's a technical question, so that's why I kind of jumped in and thought I'd get it out of the way first. So you mentioned, you gave two examples of parasitical molecules.
Yeah.
And that was the ones associated with, I think it was winter vomiting and shingles. And you said that there are particular molecules associated with those two diseases. So the question I have is, one is, what were the genesis of those molecules, in the sense that perhaps were they mutated exosomes in some ways? How did those parasitical molecules come about? And the second is, in terms of the association of those particular molecules with particular diseases, how is such associations identified? How were they identified? So that's my question.
How are they identified?
Yes, how do we know that there's a particular parasitical molecule associated with shingles, for example?
In that case, by taking what people are doing at the moment is they are exploring what they call the virome. So I talked about the microbiome, so that's the organisms living within humans. At the moment, what they're doing is they're exploring the virome. Okay, so what they're doing there is they're extracting RNA from lots of different tissues within the human body, and then they're amplifying up, they're turning them into DNA, amplifying it up, and then they're sequencing that, and then they know that that particular sequence is there. And so this is the sequence which is associated with, if you've got pustules coming out with shingles, then you'll have some of that DNA there, and you can also identify it in the ganglia, so that you know that that is actually present there. My problem with this method is that they're saying that any RNA which they amplify up is a virus, and that's clearly ridiculous. So I was just reading a paper today from somebody in my department who works on the viruses of Drosophila, and so they've looked at all the RNA in Drosophila, and which they think might be, and they say there are 160 viruses in Drosophila. It would be, if that was true, it would be like an enormous burden. The thing would never actually operate. It's clearly quite ridiculous, but that's what they're doing, because they've got a kind of protocol for doing it, and they just shove this into the protocol. They're not thinking about the biology of the situation at all. So what I do believe is some of the things that there is actually a norovirus in Drosophila, and it actually it causes Drosophila problems. So I think there are some things which are viruses, but I think most of the things that they're looking at are nothing to do with viruses at all. But they would have you believe, and they've got in the mindset of the academics, they've got it that everything like this is a virus, and obviously total nonsense. Sorry, I forgot the first part of the question. That was,
well, what is the? So
what was the origin? We have a hypothesis about the origin, and I think it's most likely that it doesn't come from somewhere else. That actually our DNA, if we looked hard enough in our DNA, we'd find that sequence. Because we need that DNA in our sequence in order to make the RNA, to make the exosome, and actually there are papers on viruses which we've got in our genome. So they've inverted it. So they say, what's happened is, these viruses have come in and then they've come into our genome. So that these bits of DNA are called, I can't remember, inclusive viruses or something like that, you know. But I think it's the other way around, that came from our genome and produced an exosome, and then that maybe went a little berserk, and then that it's only a hypothesis. As I said at the beginning, I don't know. We're just kind of going towards the truth, but I think to me, it's a much more viable explanation than the one that they've given us. Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. That was a brilliant talk. Never fails to amaze me how many different perspectives you can look at any one topic, and that was a brand new way of looking at this topic for me. I just got two simple questions. The first one is there such a thing as a pandemic? And the second one is, what would you say to someone that says, I trust the science?
No, though, I don't think there's ever been I don't think there's ever been a pandemic. In terms, I mean, I haven't really worked out what's going on with flu, but I think flu is something a bit like. I think it's something which we always have in our bodies, and it's suppressed by our immune system. We have a bad dose of it when it spreads through us initially, when we catch flu for the first time, and we go through, it's like a kind of out of control exosome going through the body, and we go down with all the shakes and everything like that, and then it's suppressed. And I think then if the immune system is not working very well, then it comes up again, we get another dose of flu. And I think there are different kinds of flus, and if you get something which is completely different, then I think that can spread. That will spread through the population, and maybe you could call that. I mean, I don't think they're not deadly viruses. Most people will survive flu. I don't think there is such a thing as a pandemic in terms of a deadly organism. I think one of the problems that we probably have had in the past, where they arise when maybe some organism like a bacterium has been inadvertently, it finds a new transmission, a new vector to take it around, and we get something coming which has been perfectly happy in some other organism, but then it's been put into humans for the first time. And then it causes problems because the two things have not been together for a long time. They haven't co-evolved for a long period of time. So I think but those are things like plague or something which would gradually spread. And that's something that we could stop because we could identify the vectors of that, and we could stop the thing at source. So as long as we have the knowledge that we have there. So I don't think that there's, I don't think, and I don't think people can create pandemics. I don't think it should be a sort of Damocles over our heads. Is there another question? I can't remember.
Just, what would you say to someone that says, I trust the science?
I would say, well, they're telling you that they have a belief system. Okay, so that doesn't show. That shows that they're not a scientist. Because if you're a scientist, then you don't believe anything. And I always used to tell students that it's really difficult to be a scientist because you can't believe anything. If you believe something, then you're not doing science. In that case, they've outsourced their thinking to somebody else. Well, it's a dangerous thing to do. I think tell them to think for themselves. Tell them to go back, look at original sources, and make up their own minds. You shouldn't be relying on somebody else to make up your mind for you. That's any adult would know that.
Hi, Richard. Just to say thanks for a lot of good information tonight, but to sort of give the chat a wee bit more back over there. I got wise to all this nonsense. Trust the science. All I can say is just think of Neil Ferguson. He said about the swine flu, the bird flu, and all that. Trust is a word that they've put into the society we've got now. You can trust no one. What you need to do is you go out there take the wee bit information you get and do the research yourself, and it all adds up. They join up the dots, and it all comes through, and then you'll get, you know, all the answers, you know, that we've all been sort of thinking, this has all been planned, and we can just add and add and add and just take our sort of self-satisfaction that we won't roll over to all this nonsense, you know. I can go on all night about it, you know. People go, yeah. we do want another Muirburg too, but when that's going to come down the line, I don't know. But we've just got to keep on, just every day, just get out there and just, you know, someone says, what's the best thing you can do? Is like play pass the parcel. Just speak to somebody. It doesn't have to be a rant, you know, like, oh, have you been vaccinated? Are you unvaccinated? Just enlighten people what we know and give them that seed, and then they can add on and add on and add on, you know. That's all I can say is we can't give up, you know. We've just got to keep the battle going, but trust nobody out there, you know. I mean, years ago when I was a wee kid, if a car pulled up and said, jump in the car, no, get away, you know. So why do we allow doctors, you know, with an untrialled vaccine, come up and say, take this, you'll be okay? No, I wouldn't take sweeties off a stranger. I'm certainly not taking a vaccine that's been untrialled and it's poison.
Yeah, well, I guess the other thing I should say about, you can't do science unless you're honest. If you're a dishonest scientist, then you're not doing science. You'll just be a burden to society as a consequence, because you'll lead people down the wrong path. So integrity is essential in science. I mean, when I was doing research, one of the most important things to do is to find people who you can trust to work with. Because I've been shafted by people who were not trustworthy, and you learn your lesson. And so I found two people who are wonderful. You know, I could trust them any day, and you can do proper science with those people. You can't work with other people whose motives are more about their careers than anything else.
Richard, thanks for a brilliant talk. I really like the way you're so going beyond the sort of, you know, viruses, do they exist or not exist? You know, but I find it's a lot of it's over my head, but it's you know, it's interesting to think, you know, we're maybe just looking at this phenomenon just in the wrong way.
Yes.
And yeah, my question's about, as I understood it, you know, you were saying what we call viruses or exosomes, you know, that cause, you know, that are implicated in disease, are originally a part of our DNA that's kind of gone a bit haywire.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of, like, I was listening to Zach Bush quite early on during the COVID event, you know, talking about what might have caused these exosomes to, you know, go like you know, like this you know, this information like an information update that is causing a lot of stress and difficulty for different organisms. And he was specifically talking about glyphosate as like and other toxins in the environment that are causing, you know, cells to basically just send out a massive distress signal saying you've got to sort yourselves out, purge toxins, you know, adapt to this new environment. The other would be perhaps like electromagnetic pollution. So, you know, the theory that the so-called Spanish flu was, you know, correlated with the introduction of what was it? Wireless communication, and where we might be perhaps with like sort of 5G and so on, you know, and what other sort of toxins could be responsible for this kind of emergent disease.
Yeah, well, I hope I've convinced you that actually the system that we have is incredibly complex, and there could be, there will be multiple things that could disrupt that system, and yeah, toxins will be one of them, and it might affect the immune system in a particular way. Yeah, I thoroughly agree with that. I think. One of the emphasis that they would like you to think at the moment is that everything is to do with genetics, and it's all predetermined. And part of the reason for that is that they've got the Human Genome Project, and these are the same people who've done the Human Genome Project, and they've got a huge population of people out there, and they want to find out how it works. And so they're getting loads of people's DNA, and they're also getting loads of people's medical records, and they're kind of trying to put them together so that they can find out how the genome works. Okay, and it's a nonsense way of going about it, because they won't find out that way, but that's what they think they'll do. But that's the mindset that they have. And they'll keep us alive so long as we've still got medical records to give them, so that they can get that information. But actually, I think the main things about health is environment is really, really important, and that should never be underestimated. Ecology is interactions between organisms and the environment, and geneticists, I know because I was trained in genetics. Geneticists have genetic influences, and then they just tag on environment. That's just a factor. We'll just add environment to it. No concept of what environment is at all. Vastly underestimated the effects of environment on health and all other aspects of human life.
Thank you, Richard. That was great. I've got a question. What struck me
not just
was,
a statement.
I'll start with a question, then I'll come back to it. So my question is, does humanity really have an enemy? Because your talk is just a microcosm of things that we are looking at: attacks, competition, hosts, parasites, etc. But everything from what I grasped from your talk is that we have nothing to fear from the natural world. The natural world does not wish to destroy us. If anything, the natural world would probably like there to be more of us, not population reduction, but increase, because there would be more hosts. And they don't kill the host, because then where are they going to live? They may be moved from host to host, but my question is, the natural world surely does not want population reduction. The natural world would prefer that we flourish in number, and there's no enemy for humanity in the natural world, because it means us no harm. It means for us all to live in some symbiotic way, and our enemy is unnatural and synthetic people, ideas, and products. So my question is, do we have actually enemies in the natural world, or are all our enemies unnatural?
Well, yeah, we are part of nature, and we've had enemies, but we've eliminated a lot of them. So we don't have any wolves in Scotland, and we don't have any bears. We don't. I mean, there are quite a lot of things that are out to get us, and I don't think I'm not one of those people who thinks that nature is all cuddly bunnies. I would say. And as the point is about too many people, I've worked in places where there are threatened tree species, for instance. So I'm concerned about tree species, and humans have decimated a whole load of those forests. They've removed all forests from Scotland. There are lots of things that humans have done which has been due to the fact that we've got a very large number of humans on this planet, and it has led to the extinction of a number of other species and the degradation of many, many habitats. So while I'm So I'm not one who thinks that we can go on having larger and larger population sizes, because it does make more and more demands, and it does lead to the extinction of species. What I'm really, really angry about is that the environmental movement of which I would have been a part, because I do believe in the protection of those habitats and the conservation of those habitats, and that they have an equal right to exist as humans do. And that whole environmental movement has been co-opted by these people, and they've corrupted it so much, so that I can't now use those arguments about protecting nature, because it's been taken over by people who are advocates of net zero and everything like that. They have corrupted the whole thing. What I've tried to show you here is that we did have, and I made a little diagram about germ theory and terrain theory. What they do is they corrupt the way in which we think, and they make two sides which then are meant to fight against one another. So now I'm fighting against the net zero people, but there are a load of people in the net zero camp who've been brainwashed, but they do have good ideas about preserving biodiversity, and I'm on their side there. But I'm not on their side about net zero, because they've been brainwashed about net zero. So, and in this particular instance, what they've done is they've set up two things. They've set up germ theory against terrain theory. Both of those things are 19th century ideas. They're not based. They're irrelevant. Shall I say they're irrelevant to today? But they've supported the terrain theory people and the no virus people, so that they can divide us. And what we should be doing, so we've got 19th century weapons here. They've pulled up barricades, they're fighting one another, and they're trying to grow forests. And the germ theory people, they've got green ones and orange ones, and the orange ones are wrong. And the terrain, those are ideas, and they're growing up. And on the terrain side, we've got good ideas and bad ideas. And they're just fighting one another, and they're preventing anyone tackling their ideas. What we should be doing, we should be out in the open here, and we should be building new ideas, and we should be destroying those things which are wrong. And we should be building something new, and something which is up to date and takes into account all the information that we've got at the moment. So I think just say beware of the way in which we're being manipulated in all of these things, setting up one group against another group, and each of those groups is corrupted in some way, and they're fighting against one another, and we want to be out of that.
So our enemies among us, as you described in the molecular biology scene, our enemies is among us, not out with us.
Yes.
And if we get our freedom and a sharing of knowledge and free speech, we will figure out what we can do and how we can do things spectacularly better. And maybe it won't matter that the population grows, because the world, with a healthier biome.
And it all depends on how it all depends on how you live and what resources you extract from. I used to work on monkey puzzle trees in Chile, and I've been to a place where they've been, and go to a monkey puzzle forest in Chile is an inspiring experience. But some of those areas have just been cleared, and they've been replaced by pines, which have come from North America completely, and they've obliterated all of the natural habitat. And that's the demands that the human population has made on that area, and the way in which they've chosen to utilize that area, and it's destroyed all the wonderful biodiversity which is there. So, it's how we interact with that rest of the environment which is important.
Probably with power over their own community would not have done that. That will not have been, it's unlikely to have been free
No, they've
Thinking,
been
local
bought out with big
There you are.
money. Yeah.
So I
yeah.
think free people maybe want to live quite simply with very modest demands upon the environment.
My first question has already been asked by somebody about the frequency. I would just like to add to that, there is a book out called Follow the Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, who correlates new forms of radio waves and different viruses that have come out worldwide. But what I would like to ask is, we've heard that fasting is meant to be good for us. And apparently after 72 hours, your body starts to eat dead cells within you. So at what point does fasting become starvation?
Well, I don't think 72 hours is starvation, is it? No. Starvation is when you're in Bangladesh and you've got absolutely nothing to eat.
Is there a time frame? Because they say that you need to fast for 72 hours before your body will start to eat cancerous cells within your body and dead cells as well. Yeah, is there a point where it does become bad for you? And obviously there is. Have you got?
Well, if you look at anorexic people, yes, it obviously does become bad for you, doesn't it?
Okay.
Yeah. If you start to become, but I'm not an expert on that area, so I can't really answer that question. And I'm afraid I can't give medical advice.
Okay.
Yeah. Is somebody else? Oh, just because it's handy. Yeah, that was an excellent talk, Richard. First of all, do you believe in the chemtrails? And if so, do you think they're having an effect on all the trees?
Well, I've seen chemtrails, and I know that there are PDFs which you can look at which advertise chemtrails. So they are. There's evidence. Yeah. So I am persuaded by the evidence that there are chemtrails. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't. It's an experiment, isn't it? We don't know. And the reason for doing an experiment is you don't know what the answer is going to be. If you do an experiment and you know the answer, then it's not an experiment. But I think that's an experiment because they're just doing it for the first time. And if you look at the constituents of whatever it is you're pouring into the atmosphere, and you look at the interaction of those particular constituents with living matter, then you can probably come to the conclusion that it's not good. So I don't think we should be playing God in the first place. I think that there ought to be a public inquiry. Well, not a public inquiry. I think that there should be very, very rigorous strictures on what you're able to pump into the environment. And we have so many. We're not allowed to pump CO2 into the environment. Why should we be able to pump that into the environment? It's totally ridiculous. Yeah. But, yeah.
Thank you. Richard, you've expressed your scepticism about the COVID pandemic and vaccination. And I was wondering if you cast that critical eye backwards to some of the other great medical successes, apparent medical successes, polio vaccine, hepatitis B, AIDS, what you think was going on there. Were there really viruses? Were there really vaccines? Or in the case of AIDS, other therapies? Do you think this, we're talking about polio, we're going back 60 years, I think. Do you think then it was basically the same agenda? They understood it wasn't working, but they were doing something else and they were just deceiving us with it?
Yeah, I'm afraid I haven't. Afraid I haven't gone back into to kind of look at that. One of the things that I think that there's a problem with is historical records of things. If you're a scientist, you want to know what the real data is, and you want to rely on. You want to have data which is reliable. And I think you can spin lots of stories about historical events. And I'm not in a position often to judge whether or not the data which these claims are based on is good or bad. And so I would always be circumspect about making up a story. It's very easy to make up stories. We're always making up stories. It's evidence, which is the important thing, and whether or not those stories stand up in the evidence. And for a historical event, you can choose, there's loads of things you can choose from which we haven't got properly recorded. And you can make up lots of stories. I think probably this has been going on for a long period of time. And vaccine harms have been known for a very long period of time, but it's just obvious from first principles that it's not going to work and it's going to cause harm. It's just, if you understand anything about how the human body works. I mean, there's so many stories I've heard about the 1918 pandemic. I mean, it's just, and they could all be true, or none of them could be true, but I don't think it's worth spending any time on it. And what we want to be spending time on is the here and now. We know at the moment all of the harms that are being done to us, and we should sort it out, the here and now, and not concentrate on things that happened in the past. That's my view, anyway.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody? Well, if anyone has a personal question for Richard that they don't want recorded, we'll be able to ask him afterwards. Thank you for that then, Richard. I think that was absolutely brilliant. The thing I was saying to you at the break there, which I think probably applies to all, is just how wonderful this whole thing is. You're describing at the very simplest level the body's defence mechanism and the response of parasites to that. And you can take that analogy at the biological level, as I think you were alluding to, Martin, right up to the societal level, the same sort of things happening. And it's just that even at the simplest level, the complexity is stunning. It's beyond words, so I won't say anything more about it. But I'm in awe of how this could possibly have happened in a billion universes. It just seems so unlikely. Anyway, that's a different speculation. I think we've seen then that much of science has became, perhaps it always was, but it certainly has now became really dogma, like the worst religious dogma, with all the standard accusations and punishments that are visited on heretics. And you must know that more than any. You actually stand for true science and skepticism, and you find yourself ostracised and punished and mocked. And not in your own case, but in other cases, plenty of scientists have been ruined for this. So there are true scientists out there, and obviously we've got plenty of demon scientists as well that I don't really know what their motivation is, but possibly it's best not to speculate in that. Money certainly would be one of them, but there must be other reasons. Anyway, I liked as well that you didn't give a definitive answer, particularly with the German terrain theory, which has now been, it's the two big things that people are arguing over. Was what one is it? As if life is that simple. So thank you for that. And then it just remains for me to say thank you to Richard and to give him. There's another question.
No, it was just, I'm not sure if we've thanked you for your work that you've done and explored in seeking answers for our benefit about what COVID may or may not have been. I think you've done a lot of work on that, and if it hasn't been said, thank you very much for doing that.
Okay, thank you, Richard.